Cool. Well, good morning. And I'm grateful to be here, man. And honestly, guys, I love when you all share and engage and be the church, man. That fills my heart so much. And don't do it for me. This is for us. We gather on Sundays. This should be called a worship service for a reason. We're here to worship the Lord, serve the Lord, and we do that by serving and loving each other. So I just am grateful for you guys. Let's keep walking through Daniel. We're in chapter 3, okay? Y'all remember last week was the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. And I'm determined to name a big deer Nebuchadnezzar. That's just such a cool name for a big deer, and just gonna take him down. But actually, man, Nebuchadnezzar, your heart will grow and develop for him as we go through the book. But right now, man, he is a prideful king, and God had a word for him. Did he not? He's just to grease the skids for you guys. He's like, hey, king, that big statue that you saw in your dream, and with the head of gold and the chest of silver and the bronze and the miry clay mixed in the feet and all that stuff. He's like, you, sir, are the gold head, and you're about to get taken over at some point. Just so you know, your kingdom will not last. And in fact, none of these kingdoms to follow you will last, except for the one that is the stone that's cut without human hands. Of course, we know that is Jesus to come to set up his kingdom on the earth, and will reign and rule. And we know from the book of Revelation that ultimately God will restore the heavens and the earth. It will all get recreated one day. So we have much to look forward to. But in light of that, we see in chapter 3, King Nebuchadnezzar, although he was grateful to Daniel for being able to interpret the dream, as he thought about it a little more, he's like, well, maybe if I'm the gold head and I'm about to get taken over, let's just see about that. And so he actually makes a purely golden image, which I envision looking a lot like what he actually saw in his dream. But he makes it about 90 feet tall. So let's look here in verse 1 of Daniel chapter 3. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, or a statue of gold, 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide. Now this, just so you know, guys, a cubit, roughly call it 18 inches. They used to measure from the tip of the elbow to the tip of the finger, and that was what they called a cubit. Well, I mean, if you're a real tall guy, that might be a little longer than 18 inches. If you're a real short dude, it might be a little shorter than 18 inches. But more or less, that's how we come up with this idea that there's a 90-foot statue. It's massive, and it's solid gold. That's a lot of gold, okay? And I personally think that Nebuchadnezzar is he's feeling prideful, It's kind of like when you tell the kid, tell some rebellious high school kid, hey man, you shouldn't be smoking cigarettes, man. Those cigarettes are bad for you, And then he's like, oh, well, at some point I'm probably going to have to quit these things, but until then, I'm going to smoke a pack a day, It's like they go extra rebellious. That's kind of what is happening here, He's just extra prideful, extra rebellious. But he sets it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. So this thing's literally about 60 miles outside of the city, out in this plain, shining like a new penny, man. A 90-foot gold statue. And he summons the satraps, the prefects, the governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all other provincial officials to come to the dedication of the image that he's set up. Man, he's pride tripping hard here, and he wants everyone to see it. So the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the advisors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the other provincial officials assembled for the dedication of the image King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood before it. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "Nations and peoples of every language, this is what you're commanded to do. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the lyre, the zither, the harp, the pipe, and all kinds of other music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever doesn't fall down and worship will be immediately will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. Okay, one little nugget here is, this is legit like symphony, by the way. This is like, he's got the band out, he's got all the head honchos, all the lead officials, he's got the magicians and the magistrates and the proconsul, and he's got everyone out there, man. He is really pumping the situation up, okay? What is interesting is the role that like music plays in our lives and all throughout the Bible. In fact, like, this is just a nugget for everybody. I felt like I was supposed to share it. It came to mind as I was reading, like, you know, it was it's music that was played when the trumpet was sound, you know, the walls of Jericho come down. You know, it was music that David played on his harp that would calm the angry nature of King Saul, right? The Psalms are all written to music. Really, man, what we listen to, like what we put in our ears makes a difference. You know, I see a lot of Christians living lives as if what they put in their ears doesn't matter or is meaningless. And how foolish that really is. Like if you're a Christian, yet you're listening to music that does in no way honor God, and in fact, majority of the music that's out there does the opposite, man, you need to watch yourself. Like be careful. These people weren't bowing down to this image until they got worked up in an emotional frenzy when the band starts playing. The band starts playing and everybody's like falling down like, oh, King Nebuchadnezzar, you know. Music moves people. It does. Like it moves all of us. And so what kind of music you engage in, it really is important. Like what you listen to. Like is it, do you think it's meaningless? Well, listen to the words. And man, I'm telling you, the enemy likes to get you drifting from truth, drifting from the Word of God, drifting from praise to God with music and movies and all kinds of content. So just be mindful of the content you're consuming. But therefore, in verse 7, as soon as they heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, and all the other kinds of music, all the nations and peoples of every language fell down and worshiped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now, this is kind of hard to imagine. I think like Woodstock or something, you know, and like this image is like out in this field, and these people are just kind of loony. Like, what are they doing? They're literally laying in the grass with a band falling down in front of a statue in the middle of nowhere. Like, what are you doing? But they're into it. This is the truth. They're into it. They have been sucked in to the environment. They have been stricken with fear, and they've also believed that their security is in King Nebuchadnezzar. And so they just do what he says to do, whether it makes a lick of sense or not. And I think people live their lives that way right now. You look around and you're like, what are we doing? Like, what are you doing? And it's because they don't understand, frankly, what they're doing. But at this time, some astrologers came forward and they denounced the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "May the king live forever. Your Majesty has issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all the other kinds of music must fall down and worship the image of gold, and that whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace." Now, just so you guys know, this is kind of a setup. These guys are this was like an intentional setup, okay? The elite leaders, remember, what happened to them last week? What happened to them in the last chapter? The magistrates, the satraps, the musicians, what happened to those guys last week? They got embarrassed by Daniel. They couldn't interpret the king's dream, right? This was their job. This is what they were supposed to do. They're supposed to be the wise ones, but they looked like the morons at the end of the day. And so they're embarrassed, okay? This is why they're kind of like, you know? It's like the kid that like trips the other kid on the playground and he thinks it's funny and everybody laughs. And it's like funny for a second, even though it was totally wrong. And then the kid that he trips like goes over and like cracks the dude in the nose and like breaks his face because he's like, yeah, bro, you embarrass me, I'm about to crush your face, right? I mean, I was that kid when I was little. It's like, oh yeah, you think it's funny? Wait till tomorrow in the cafeteria and I smash your face in front of the whole school, you know? And that's what happened. I went to the principal's office. But it's like, dude, we don't like this, right? I mean, it's just true. Like, that did not look like Jesus, by the way. I didn't know Jesus then. But that's how we are, right? You're like, wait a minute, bro. Like, hold on. That's how these guys are. They're kind of like, oh, all right, I see you, Daniel, Meshach, and Shadrach, and Abednego. I see you boys. Y'all got one coming. And so I really do believe this is a setup. And so they're like reminding the king, like, hey, king, don't you remember that promise that you made? If they didn't bow down to the image, man, we got that hot furnace going over here. And by the way, the hot furnace likely was used to bake bricks and melt irons and things of that nature. It was a building, situation most likely, but they did use it as a form of capital punishment during this time. But nonetheless, just know, and these guys are kind of, they're working a setup here. In verse 12, but there's some Jews whom you set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold that you have set up. Now, what they're saying is not wrong. It's just they've intentionally set it up. They knew that they weren't going to bow down to the image, so they're like, oh, let's get the image set up, and let's get the king to make a decree, and then let's make sure the king holds to that decree because he's the king, right? And so these guys have set the trap, they think. Now, furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summons Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so these men, this is so interesting, so these men were brought before the king. Well, why weren't they immediately thrown into the fire? He already made the decree. If you don't bow down, you go in the fire. Right? Remember what happened to the boys in the last chapter? Like, they were about to all get killed. What did he say? I'm gonna knock all your houses down and burn all the rubble. That's what he said. And Nebuchadnezzar didn't play any games. Like, this dude said what he meant and meant what he said. But why is this an exception? He's like, let me talk to him. Right? Shocking, a little shocking. Like these boys should be roasted already. But he talks to them. This is just a conjecture, but I think that Nebuchadnezzar liked these guys. I really do. I think that God had favor with them. It reminds me of like Potiphar. Remember when Potiphar's wife tries to manipulate Joseph and she's like promiscuous with him? And Joseph's like, like this lady is a WHOR, right? Like I'm out on this lady. Like she's setting me up. And then she goes to Potiphar and she's like, he tried to rape me, right? It was a total setup. But Potiphar, instead of just nuking Joseph, he puts him in prison because I believe that he didn't believe his wife. I think he knew she was a scam, okay? I think that this is kind of similar. I think Nebuchadnezzar's like, man, what? Like, I know that these guys aren't bowing down, and I can't go against my word, but like, I like these guys. So it's like, now what do I do? It's kind of like Herod and John the Baptist, right? When the Herodias is dancing promiscuously in front of the boys, and they're like, oh, I'll give you anything. Just tell me what you want. What does she say? I want John the Baptist's head on a platter. And Herod's like, oh no. It said he was sad as he liked John. Like he knew John was a prophet of God. Like he knew it. But he was worried about what other people thought more than he did about what God had thought. And so he went ahead and had his head lopped off. Right? That's unfortunately the story of John the Baptist. But anyway, Pilate and Jesus, same way, man. Pilate was like, his heart was broke when he's like, do you want Barabbas or Jesus? Like, you want a guy who we find no fault in? Or do you want this dude who's a clear and obvious murderer? And what do they say? We want Jesus, right? Pilate's like, you kidding me? But he's a Roman governor, and he's like, Jesus it is, There's so many examples here. But I think this is what Nebuchadnezzar's dealing with. He's kind of wrestling. He says, is it true? I love that. He's looking for the truth. Now, he doesn't really act on it in this moment, but he is wanting to know, like, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worshiping the image of gold that I've set up? Now when you hear the sound, he's giving them a second chance, right? Which was not like Nebuchadnezzar. This was rare. But he says, when you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the zither, the lyre, the harp, the pipe, and all the kinds of music, if you're ready to fall down, worship the image that I made. Very good. He's like, man, I can't go back on my word, but I'll give you guys a second chance. Go ahead and fall down in front of that thing out in the field. And he says, but if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. And then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? Well, he's about to find out. he's about to find out what God will rescue them from his hand, okay? So, I love this part. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him. This is quite politically correct. They say, King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we're thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. Now I love this. But even if he does not, because God is sovereign, is what they're thinking, we want you to know, your majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold that you have set up. In the in the Real Talk version, you guys probably, I'm reading out of the NIV. In the RTV, which is the Real Talk version, this is like polite for up yours, king. That's what they're saying. Hey, they're real polite about it, but it's like, not happening, man. We serve the living God, and dude, if you want to throw us in there, that's fine. And if he delivers us, we praise him. If he doesn't, fine too. Like, we're good. It goes back to this word resolve that I want to circle this whole book around. Like, these men resolved to follow and honor God no matter the circumstances. The decision was already made, right? It's like my buddy Matt that I mentioned earlier. Matt says, hey man, on Fridays I get to eat sweets, but no other day of the week do I eat sweets. So when the Oreos are smiling at me in the pantry on Tuesday night, he's like, forget you, Oreos. You're a Friday thing. It's Tuesday, dude. Not putting up with you. Not today, right? He always just makes this little joke around how we so easily compromise. We're like, oh, the Oreos do look really good, I mean, the bag's like half open. I can just slide these 5 over here on the right side and just hammer them real quick. Nobody will know. And then I'll brush my teeth. But, like, if you've just resolved, like, that's a Friday thing, man. Oreos on Fridays, no other day. Like, if we treat our relationship like that, it's like, hey man, relationship with the Lord like that, we have resolve. Like, we've made decisions. Like, it's like the kids song that we sing in kids ministry a lot. Like, I follow Jesus, no turning back, no turning back. It's like, I've made that decision. Like, I'm following him. Like, in business, we call it a burn the ships mentality. Like, I tell guys in my company, dude, you can't work for me if you don't burn the ships. Dude, if you got another part-time job or you think you're going to do something else, you can't work here. Why? Because, dude, you're always going to be falling back to plan B. Dude, I'm looking for a no turning back mentality. Burn the ships. That's what the Vikings did when they took over a new territory. They literally burned the ships so that they were committed to surviving wherever it is that they sailed to conquer, right? That's the idea of it. So when you're following Jesus, man, you got to burn the ships. Like, if you think, I'm going to run back to this, I'm going to run back to that relationship, I'm going to run back to the bottle, I'm going to run back to this issue, I'm going to run back to these bad habits, I'm going to run back to whatever it is that you found security and temporary fix in, man, that's not going to work. Like, following Jesus requires resolve, and that's what these men have here. And in verse 19, Nebuchadnezzar was furious. He's mad now, dude. He's hot mad, steaming hot mad. And no pun intended. It's about to get hot. Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude toward them changed. Now he's legit mad. He's like, I'm done with these guys. And pride is really sunk in deep for him. He orders the furnace to be heated 7 times hotter than usual. It commanded his strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So the boys are bound with ropes. They're tied up, and his best men, Literally, Nebuchadnezzar needed his best men to tie these guys up and put them in the furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and the other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent, and the furnace was so hot, the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took him up. Literally, he lost his best guys in his rage. Okay? Rage is never a good thing, especially for men. The fire is so hot, as these guys are trying to get him into the furnace, these dudes get nuked. Okay. And these three men firmly tied fall into the blazing furnace as the soldiers die next to them. Now King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement, and he asks his advisors, "Weren't there three men that we tied up and threw in the fire?" They replied, "Certainly, Your Majesty." He says, "Look, I see four men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the fourth looks like a son of the gods." So who do we have here in the fire with the boys? Jesus, clearly. Anyone, pop quiz, anyone know what this is called? A Christophany. That's right, a Christophany. Some people call it a theophany. We get more specific in that it's a Christophany because it is Christ, it is Jesus. It reminds me of when Jesus shows up and fights the Battle of Jericho in Joshua, right? And Joshua's like, "Who are you, man? You look strong and mighty, but are you for us or against us?" He's like, "Get on your face, boy. Like, you're on holy ground." He's like, "Oh, this is Jesus." Like, he knows that is the Son of God. And of course, he was the one that fought the Battle of Jericho. But I love that. So Jesus is literally in the fire with them. Okay? This is fascinating. He says, Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blazing furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So he's at least acknowledging their God. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, prefects, governors, royal advisors crowded all around them, and they saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Man, I want to pause here and share an observation. The obvious and the miraculous is clearly happening here. Like this is like almost like a kid's Bible lesson, right? These boys have been thrown into the fire, and they were bound up, and God has supernaturally cared for them. What I love, though, is it says that their robes weren't burned, their hair wasn't burned, right? But what was burned? The things that had them bound up. Is that not like Jesus? Like sometimes he puts us in the fire, and we don't know why we're there. There's different reasons why we find ourselves in the fire. The primary one is God uses the fire. God uses the fire to refine us, like gold refined in the fire. And so we, like pressure makes diamonds, right? It's like God uses hard things in our life to form us into his image. But some of the times, the things that bind us, or a lot of times we put ourselves in the fire, do we not? I mean, half the time we find ourselves in a trial, it's self-inflicted. Like Jeriel was saying, right? You're praying for Caleb. Probably self-inflicted. But the good news is if he will let Jesus meet him in the fire, Jesus can roast the ropes that are binding him, and he can walk out unscathed. Other than that, he has no option. Like, he's going to get torched. And that's the truth. That's the same for all of us, right? But I love that the ropes were burned. The things that they were bound up, the things that the enemy wanted to use for evil, Jesus scorched those things. And these boys walk out unbound and unscathed. So I don't know what ropes need to be burned off in your life. You might find yourself in the fire right now. You might be facing a test. But man, I think it would be good for you to see what ropes possibly got you in there to begin with, and let the Lord burn them things off for you. You're not coming out of the fire until they're burned off. That I do know. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they come out of the fire. I'm sorry, I already read that. Let's go to 28. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants." Now, it wasn't just an angel. We know it was literally the Son of God. But what is interesting is Nebuchadnezzar it sounds like he's trending in the right direction, but he still says, "Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego." He does not say, "Praise be to my God." He's still not taking ownership of his personal relationship with Jesus. He's acknowledging the God of Daniel has power and authority. He's acknowledging that the God of the Hebrews, these men here, has glory and majesty, but he's not yet willing to tie his name to it. Boy, is that a picture of America if I've ever seen it. There's so many people that believe in God. They might believe in Jesus. They believe that he's good. They might believe that he's holy. But by no means are they willing to attach their name to his life. They don't want to follow him with his stamp on their heart as they follow him wholeheartedly. They still want to live their lives, but acknowledge him. It's one of the greatest tricks in America right now that the enemy has played on our people. Is this association with Jesus, but not a real attachment, personal following. And so they trusted in him, and they defied the king's command, and they were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any other god except their own. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces. Here he goes again. He likes cutting people into pieces and burning their house down. But that's what he's saying. Anyone that says anything against their God, will be cut into pieces, their houses will be burned, turned into piles of rubble, and for no other God can save in this way. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Now, what's really interesting, has anybody noticed something other than the extremely obvious in the story? Where's Daniel? Anybody know? Kind of interesting.
He was at the gate of the king last time.
Yeah. Where's Daniel? So it's kind of interesting to think about. And I'm not building significant doctrine around this, but given the nature of the book of Daniel, it's really interesting to just consider the fact that he is away on the king's business, right? Daniel was promoted to right-hand man, right? So it's very likely that King Nebuchadnezzar had sent Daniel on a mission. Daniel's out. He's out of town, more than likely. Some people say, well, Daniel must have bowed down. No, that's foolish. Read the rest of the book, you know, moron. He did not. Daniel has more resolve than anybody in the book, okay? But I find it interesting he's not there. And these Jewish men are thrown into the fire when he's not there, but then they are miraculously saved by Jesus, and the world comes to know him. So I'm going to plant this in your brains. Hopefully you Bible students will find some curiosity in me probing you with the idea of where is Daniel. You might want to do some research in Revelation 13. Revelation 13. You know, there is, at the end of days, there will be a world ruler, right? The Antichrist that will come up, and he will set up an image, and he will demand everyone to worship it, or they will be killed. It's also important to know that the church is not there during that period of time. God is dealing specifically with the Jews during the tribulation period, which is indeed the fire, the worst fire the Jews have ever seen in human history. All of this is to come. So I'm not here to preach all of Revelation 13 or how it ties to Genesis 22 through 24 or any of that. I'm just hoping to stir your mind around man, what's the significance of Daniel not being there? And I want you to form some of your own opinions around eschatology, the end times. We talked last week a lot about the kingdom, right? Jesus is coming to set up his kingdom. He came the first time as a suffering servant to die for the sin of the world. Now, when he comes back, which has not yet happened, he will reign and rule on the planet. He will come back and set his foot on the Mount of Olives and physically reign and rule on the earth. Like, I believe the Bible teaches that very clearly. You got to come to your own conclusion on that. But it will help you if you get motivated around, well, where am I? Like, do I get raptured? If I get raptured, where do I go? What does it mean, the marriage supper of the Lamb? What does it mean that we are robed as he is and we return with him when he comes down to reign and rule, and he's got a sword in his mouth and he's got a robe of lightning, and then yet his robes are covered in blood. Why are his robes covered in blood? What enemy is he avenging? I mean, all these things, like God's allowing us to be in the church age now, but we already know God's not done with the Jews, right? So there's much in history that's yet to be fulfilled, and so, man, we don't all just drift up into the clouds and float around for eternity, man. Like, I don't know what your view of heaven is like, but man, you got to reshape it. And it will help you to know that there is a pretty descriptive future for you and I beyond just floating in the clouds singing holy, holy, holy. Okay? Now that alone would be amazing, but it's way more descriptive than that. Okay? And so I don't want to convince you of any certain alignment around what you believe in the end times, but it will bless you to look into it. In fact, the very book of Revelation says there's a blessing in there for those who would read and hear the words in this book. Like, that's what it says. God, that is a promise, and God's in the promise-keeping business. Always has been and always will be. So he says, you're blessed if you look into this. And so I don't have time today to exposit all of that for you, but man, plug into Revelation 13, see what you think about how it connects to Daniel 3. But nonetheless, if you find yourself in the fire this morning, man, know that if you let him, if you trust him, man, God will be with you. And let's get those ropes burnt off so you can walk out and tell people exactly what God has done for you, and others may come to know him. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this morning. Thank you for your word. Thank you for the three Jewish boys who are such a testimony of faith that we need, and the kind of resolve that we need as a church, Lord, to reach this community. Like, we need to make decisions in our life to follow you, no turning back, and look forward into the things that you have for us, and prioritizing you in our lives and giving you the authority on the throne of our lives. Jesus, we put you there because it is your right place. And God, if you reign and rule in our hearts, we look forward to the day that you will reign and rule on the planet, and we will join you in that. And what a glorious day that will be. But God, there's much for us to look forward to in the future. But God, we need you here today. Like, we need you here and now. Like, God, people are hurting. People are broken. I'm not exempt from that category, Lord. We're all human. But God, you're the Redeemer, and you are the one that can make a way. And so, God, just keep doing what you're doing in our midst. I'm grateful for this church family. I pray that you would help us, God, to continue to find unity among one another, and encourage and edify each other, to build one another up for the purpose of maturity and glorifying you as a healthy church body in Appleton City. In Jesus' name, amen.